Welcome to a series called He Trains My Hands for War, where we're going through the book of Joshua, verse by verse, because Joshua is the only and by far the best of any kind of an example that you will ever see of a nation of people being obedient to God as the army of the living God, following his instructions step by step, conquering everything in their path, because they followed God's instructions. And whenever they didn't follow his instructions, it caused all sorts of problems. I strongly believe that in the end times, we will all unite as in the warring of the saints. And in order to fully understand how to be in the army of the living God, this is what you got. You got the book of Joshua. It's your best example. So we're going through that book. And we reached that place where they have finally crossed the Jordan River. And I want to, before we get into reading, I also want to continue to encourage you to prepare physically as well as we go through this. Joshua is a way to prepare to understand God's direction and being able to see prophecy and believe it to be true and walk into something that looks really scary, knowing that God is going to do what he is going to do and what he says he will do. So prepare physically as well. You can't be in the army of the saints and just all of a sudden get off your recliner for the first time in 20 years. You have to prepare physically. It's hard, physically hard. So I just want to continue to encourage you. Get out there, work out, spend time in nature, walk, learn fighting skills, prepare with your weapon, that kind of thing. Whatever preparing means to you, you do that thing. And as we've gone through that place, we last talked about how as soon as they crossed, God amplified Joshua and everybody feared him from then on. And for the rest of his life, he was the leader of the Israelites. So we're just going to pick it up right there. Joshua 4, starting verse 14. On that day, the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of the testimony to come up from the Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, Come up from the Jordan. And it came to pass when the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Jordan had come from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet touched dry land, that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and flowed over all its banks as before. Okay, I want to pause there because there's a lot going on there. And I definitely want to point out a couple things that we should really take note of. Let's start with verse 15. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of testimony to come up from the Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, Come up from the Jordan. It came to pass when the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord had come from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet touched the dry land, that the waters of the Jordans returned to their place and flowed over all its banks as before. So here they are on the other side of the Jordan, and as we saw before, it's really important because it dried up miles upstream by Adam, the city of Adam, and it's like it walled up like a heap. It's the way the Bible describes it, not like some rocks came down and made a dam. And then, 90 miles later, all of a sudden, here's the Israelites. Right as the priests step their feet into that Jordan, it just all of a sudden dries up in a millisecond like that. And at the time, the water was gushing over the banks, is what the Bible describes that. And then here's, estimated at least 1 million people and all their cattle and all their livestock and all their tents and all their food and all their whatever it is they're hauling around the desert for the last 40 plus years. They're all crossing this thing, and what that must have looked like. I mean, if you lay your eyes on what 1 million people looks like, it's a daunting thing. I remember one time when I was in 4th grade, we in math class, we did this thing where we counted out 1 million bottle caps. I don't know why, just whatever reason, over about 2 months, we just counted bottle caps and counted them. And when we were finished, we put them in a giant pile in the middle of the library at my elementary school, and this pile was taller than I was. It was a big, giant pile You know, it's almost as if a truck came and just dumped a pile of gravel, but it was 1 million bottle caps. Now put that in the form of people and all the livestock that necessarily sustains over 1 million people, and all the equipment and the housing and everything that would sustain over 1 million people, and what that must look like to cross over that river on dry ground of all things. And then to say, well, okay, now take up some stones, 12 stones from the middle of the river and set it up on this side of the banks. We know, there was a reputation. We got those stones from the middle, by the way. And that way the children of Israel will always be reminded of this miracle. And then the priests just stay there as everybody crosses. And then all of a sudden, as soon as that last priest steps his foot carrying that ark outside, just boom, water gushing again over the edges. What that must have looked like. I mean, because there would have been people observing. You can't just do that in secret. There would have been all sorts of people observing it. And as a matter of fact, once reports get out, people were horrified by it. It's important that we see the miracles of God for what they are, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm sure somewhere there's a Discovery Channel episode about how that happened scientifically and blah, blah, blah. But you can't do that. That was something that we as the remnant, we as those people that I believe will see Jesus' second coming, and will have to go through 3.5 years of tribulation, that we will have to navigate things that won't make sense. And we can't sit there and see a miracle and go, oh, wow, that's weird that lightning bolt just struck our enemy, or, oh, that's weird how the earth just consumed an entire army. I wonder how we can say scientifically that took place. It is only God that can do that stuff. All he has to do is just whisper it. It comes reality, whatever that thing is, whether it defies physics and math or not. And this is something that we have to get into our heads. This miracle of this Jordan definitively is proved a miracle by the, one, it was not, maybe it was a coincidence that right when the priest stepped foot, that all of a sudden became dry from 90 to 100 miles upstream. But you can't say it's a coincidence that all of a sudden, the moment 1 million people have crossed and the last foot steps out, that it just gushes over again. Just can't. It's miracles. And that's the only way that these people achieve what they're going to achieve for the rest of this book, is through the miracles of God. It's the best weapon they have. It's better than a nuclear missile. It's better than any sort of modern weaponry that exists today. And as the army of the saints, you have to begin to rely and trust those weapons. So I hope this video helps. Any thoughts or insight on any of that? Definitely put it below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel, we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.